Everyone, Sarna, everybody. Today, after a few hours of practice, we are going to start the discussion session. Can I request everyone to say sadhu for that?
Sadhu, 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 sadhu.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Katang bhavitani cha kundaliya tini sucharitani. Katang bahuli katani chattaro satipattani paripurenti. Ida kundaliya bhikkhu kaya ducharitang pahaya kaya sucharitang bhaveti. Vachi juttaritang pahaya vachi sucharitang bhaveti. Mano juttaritang pahaya mano sucharitang bhaveti. Evang bhavitani ko kundaliya tini sucharitani evang bahuli katani chattaro satipattana paripurenti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu,
Dear
sadhu,
friends in Dhamma, today is 29th of October 2024. We have just finished another weekly mindfulness session that we usually conduct on Tuesdays. And this particular verse that I have just recited has been taken and discussed even in the previous two sessions, and the last of which we could not record. Anyway, the discourse is found in the connected discourses section under mountain section, and the name of the sutta is a Kundaliya Sutta. And Kundaliya, as you all should be able to remember now, is a person. He is a wanderer who goes around parks and monasteries and earn his living and listening to talks and following the spiritual guidance of these people who are teaching in the parks and monasteries. So he meets the Blessed One and exchange the greeting, and he introduced himself to the Blessed One and says, I am so and so, and this is how I live. And when I go to these parks, usually what I hear is that everyone is trying to emphasize on their viewpoint, and they vehemently argue to confirm it. And some people say the other way around, that arguing to confirm your own viewpoint is a bit of immature and it is not good. And these are the two types of ideas. If I sum up the talks that I have heard and the teachers I have met, then he's asking the very same question. Why are you living this life? Wearing a robe and going from place to place and begging food from other people and living on what you receive from others. What is the purpose? Then Buddha is giving an unexpected answer, which really crossed his mind, and he was glued and magnetized by that answer. And the answer he gave was Kundaliya, Tathagata. Tathagata means another term for Buddha, lives for the benefit and the fruit of true knowledge and liberation. And when he heard this, he immediately was thrilled, and he immediately asked another question. Oh, Master Gautama, can you tell me what things, when developed and cultivated, fulfill true knowledge and liberation? Then the Blessed One says, 7 factors of enlightenment. You will have to develop and cultivate 7 factors of enlightenment. Then you will get the liberation, then you will get the true knowledge and you will have the fruit of it. And then he's asking what one will have to develop and cultivate to fulfill the requirement of 7 factors of enlightenment. Then he says it should be 4 foundations of mindfulness. So if you develop 4 foundations of mindfulness, the destination of that will be factors of enlightenment. It's not just one factor, all the factors of enlightenment. So Kundaliya is asking now, he sees that there is some rationale here. He sees that there is a path here. So he is immediately asking the next question. Master Gautama, what things when developed and cultivated fulfill the 4 establishment of mindfulness? Then he says the 3 kinds of good conduct. Then he's asking, Kundaliya asking the next question, what and when developed, cultivated, and will reach the 3 kinds of good conduct. Then the Blessed One says, restraint of the sense faculties. So if you restrain your sense faculties, ear, eye, tongue, nose, body, and the mind, those are the sense faculties. If you, especially the first 5, if you restrain them, then that will lead to good conduct. And when you develop and cultivate that, it will lead to good conduct. And after this question, the Blessed One is starting to tell him not what is necessary, but how it will be done. Because he is a person already having the restrained sense faculty. He is not living a household life. He is not having a normal civil life. He is having an exceptional, different type of civil life. He is sort of a beggar, but not for the sake of begging. He is looking, he's associating monastics. He's associating teachers in the park and trying to understand something more about life. So therefore, he's not indulging his sense faculties. Then once Buddha brought him to the level at which he is, and then he's from there on, he's trying to explain how it should be done. And now Kundaliya is not asking question, but the Blessed One is preaching it. So what he says is, Kundaliya, listen to me. I'm going to tell you how this should be done. And he says, Kundaliya, restraint of sense faculties developed and cultivated so that it fulfills the 3 kinds of good conduct. And here Kundaliya, having seen an agreeable form with eye, a bhikkhu, which means a person who is practicing, doesn't long for it, or become excited by it, or generate lust for it. And that is one side when you see something. And the other side is, it may be not agreeable, it may be disagreeable. In that case, he says, is not dismayed by it, is not daunted by it, is not dejected by it, is without ill will about it, although it is disagreeable. So when this is done, and if you are clever enough, if you are capable enough, if you are confident enough to do this, then he says that person's body is steady, so is his mind, inwardly well composed and well liberated. So far as the sense faculties are concerned, he's having a monitoring system for his sense faculties, and therefore, since there is a monitoring system, he's not getting bogged down in the sense faculties. He is, so far as the sense faculties are concerned, is well liberated from them. And we have discussed this in detail in our first talk. And then the Blessed One says, the next one is 3 kinds of good conduct, how it should be done. The cultivation and development of of this sense restraint leads to the three kinds of good conduct. So how it leads to three kinds of good conduct is because when you are not doing when you maintain steady mind and steady body, you will not have any bad physical activity. You will not have any bad mental verbal activity. And since you are very focused about it, and your conduct is going to be different. Your conduct is going to be not normal. So that gradually leads to the development of good conduct. And then the Blessed One is saying, when the sense restraint is developing in that manner, the type of three good conducts that you will develop would be you will abandon the bodily misconduct, instead develop the bodily good conduct. You will abandon the verbal misconduct and develop the good verbal conduct. And you will abandon the mental misconduct and develop the good mental conduct. Right? So in other words, when you have an agreeable thing, when you have something agreeable bogged down in it, then you will do anything to maintain that agreeable situation. So when you do anything to maintain that situation, you will not know what you will do. You don't care about it. And that is what we see in the world today, in YouTube, in social media, in main media, in all the papers, in all forms of communication. We can see that bodily misconduct, verbal misconduct, and because of the mind misconduct in the mind, that's simply because there is something that you like, you some or other try to do it, and you don't try to restrain it. And there is something you don't like, you some or other want to chop it off and get rid of that. And you will not maintain the lack of or the abandoning of the ill will. You will get dejected and you will get dismayed by it, and then you will do all sorts of misconduct because there is no sense restraint. But the person who is having sense restraint naturally will have, therefore, abandoning of bodily misconduct, verbal and mental misconduct, and not he doesn't simply abandon it, and he replaces that with good bodily conduct, good verbal conduct, and good mental conduct. For example, we discussed in the previous session, instead of killing animals, which is bodily misconduct, you will start freeing animals. And there may have animals to be slaughtered in the slaughterhouse. You go to the slaughterhouse and then pick those animals and then you free them. And this is very popular and very common in Sri Lanka. A lot of people do it. They release birds in this manner, fish, very difficult. They release crabs. They take live crabs and release live crab, and especially cows and goats. They release mainly in this manner. And similarly, instead of stealing, you don't take others' money, but you give what you have. Instead of sexual misconduct, you maintain faithful relationships. So like that, not only you get rid of the misconduct, but you replace that with the, not only you get rid of the bad conduct, misconduct, you replace that with the good conduct. And living in this manner, the result of this will be avoiding transgressional defilements. These are only bodily and verbal, physical and verbal. And we call it morality. We call it virtue. We call it sila. And this physical and verbal misconduct, rather abandoning or the refraining from physical and verbal misconduct is not sufficient. It should lead to higher mental conduct as well. So when it comes to higher mental conduct, your way of thinking will change. So when you have sense indulging, you always have sensual thoughts. You always have, because you want to maintain your sensual thoughts, your optimization of the sense faculties. You don't worry about having any ill will thoughts. You don't worry about having any harmful thoughts, because your objective is to optimize your sense pleasure. So therefore, one who is not having sense restraint, and one who is having physical and verbal misconduct, will always have this mental misconduct of, we call it kama vitakka, vyapada vitakka, hinsa vitakka. Kama vitakka means sensual thoughts. Vyapada vitakka means ill will thoughts. Hinsa vitakka means harmful thoughts. So those are the obsessional defilements that we have in our mind. They are engraved in the mind. So when you replace your misconduct, physical and verbal misconduct, with the good conduct, your mental misconducts or obsessional defilements change, and they become, instead of kama vitakka, you will have thought of renunciation, and instead of ill will, you will have thought of non-ill will. Instead of harmful thought, you will have harmless thoughts. We call it renunciation. Not having ill will, we call loving kindness. Not having harmful thoughts, we call it kindness. So we don't practice these things separately. We don't practice loving kindness. We don't practice kindness. We don't practice renunciation as such, but we practice mindfulness. When we practice mindfulness, all these three happens. What we do is, in mindfulness, is we simply observe the present moment of oneself. When you observe the present moment of oneself, you have got to be 100% loving yourself. You should have a lot of loving kindness to yourself, and you should be very kind to yourself, and you must have renunciated your sensual pleasure in that particular period of time. Now, you have walked for 45 minutes, you have sat for 45 minutes, and in those 1.5 hours, what you did was you renunciated all what you had, and you engaged in these two activities. And when you do that, you do with a lot of compassion towards you. You don't do that with agony and agitation. And even if you have an agony and agitation, you don't agonize the agony. You don't agitate the agitation. Instead, you observe it. And observing your own agitation, observing your own annoyance, observing your own negativity is in itself a loving kindness. What we think is, usually when we have a negativity, we should somehow get rid of that with some positivity. So incorporating positivity when you have negativity means you hate the negativity you have. So in a subtle way, trying to do good things means you are indirectly imposing negativity to your system. So in mindfulness, we don't do that. We simply keep observing. When you keep observing, it is the best compassion that you can have to yourself, best kindness that you can have to yourself, because you don't try to harm yourself. You simply try to observe. And you have given up everything, and your good mental conduct gradually start developing. I'm not saying when you start on the very first day or everything will be developed, but it's a process. When you do it over and over again, mindfulness is a package to all the three good mental conducts. So we have, this is a summary of what we have been discussing in the past few weeks. Today's topic is different. Today's topic is 4 foundations of mindfulness. So it says, it is in this way that the kinds of good conduct are developed and cultivated so that they fulfill the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So now you can understand the significance of mindfulness. When you have mindfulness only, you can talk about 4 foundations of mindfulness. Before understanding 4 foundations, you must know what mindfulness is. And when you know mindfulness, your own liberation. So that is exactly what the Blessed One is telling. Kundaliya. So now we are trying to embark on that journey of understanding 4 foundations of mindfulness. I think I have done quite a lot of discussion or this 4 foundations of mindfulness I have separately discussed, and I may have about 30-40 talks about it already in YouTube. So if you are interested, you can listen to them. And if I may take a summary of 4 foundations of mindfulness, again, mindfulness means choiceless awareness. Mindfulness means the art of not doing anything. So when you are not doing anything, you simply become an observer. A lot of people think when we don't do anything, when we don't choose, we simply become dormant. We simply become lazy, lethargic people. It is not that. You will have to be very closely observing. When you are mindful, your observation capability must be very high. We call it vigilant. We call it diligence. So you should have, although you are not doing anything, your vigilance and diligence should not die or fade away. It must be ever more sharper. And then when that happens, that you don't take it to the external world, you take it to the internal world. You take it to the inner space rather than the outer space. We already have a lot of diligence and vigilance with so many, that telescope, this telescope. With all that, we have diligence and vigilance to the outside world. To the outer space, we explore the outer space, we explore all the galaxies, but we don't have any scope, any mirror, any equipment to see inside. And even if you have an equipment to see inside, you can't see it, but somebody else will see yours. So what the Blessed One has done is, he has given us a tool for oneself to see oneself. It is not just the physical thing. You can completely see both your physical process and mental process. So that is what the mindfulness does. So if I may signpost where you will have this mindfulness laid are the 4 foundations. The 4 foundations are mindfulness on the body, mindfulness on the feelings, mindfulness on the mind, and mindfulness on the mental objects or phenomena, we call it. So those are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness on the body means you become observant of your physical process. That is one section or one part of any living being. And feelings, mental, and phenomena are the other sections, which I usually call the mental process. So it's taking your awareness, to the physical process as well as mental process. So, when we practice, it is very important to understand for whom this is applicable. Mindfulness is applicable in general to human beings or to any animal who is able to get this message and understand and act upon it, right? So the usual term that is used to explain such people by Tathagata, by the Blessed One, is bhikkhu, is sangha, is a monk, right? So monk does not mean shaven head and the saffron robe. Monk means a person who is ready to practice mindfulness. And that has been explained in the stanza, worshipping Sangha. It says any person who is walking on the path to the first entry, first stage of wisdom is a monk, is a bhikkhu, right? So all you guys are not just doing as another enjoyment. You are doing it for your own liberation. You are doing it for the wisdom. You are doing it to eradicate this process of suffering that we undergo every other second, if not every second, right? So therefore, our aim is to enlighten. So therefore, all of you are in this category. So it is applicable in general to any human being, irrespective of his gender, irrespective of his age, irrespective of his religion, irrespective of his caste, irrespective of his creed, irrespective of anything that you can use to discriminate human beings are not applicable here. It is simply the language of humanity is mindfulness and four foundations of mind. So Blessed One says, when you practice four foundations of mindfulness, there are great benefits. And he has given 5 benefits. First one is the purification of beings. Purification of beings means what we just discussed. When you are mindful, you restrain your sense faculty. You will not indulge in sensuality. Therefore, there is some control, some monitoring, some supervision of satisfying sense faculty. When there is no supervision, when there is no monitoring, when there is no controlling system into that, then the world goes to dog, as has happened today. And we discussed this in our first talk. Someone who is practicing is already having that restraint of sense faculties. So that in itself is a purification. We call it transgressional defilement. So you will not be, when you don't indulge in sense faculties, naturally you will have good physical conduct and good verbal conduct. So having a good physical and verbal conduct is the first purification. And the second purification is the purification of mind, purification of the other stage, which we call obsessional defilement. The obsessional defilements that we usually have are the sense desire and ill will, sloth and torpor. And for those who are practicing, there are additional 2. We call them worry and agitation and skeptical doubt. So these are the obsessional defilements, and we will be able to go beyond these obsessional defilements as well if you are practicing mindfulness. How you go beyond this obsessional defilement is that you will be simply observing them when they arise. You will not be worried about them. You will not be trying to get rid of them, because mindfulness means simply be aware, right? So when you are aware in this manner, you will purify yourself even from the second type of defilement. And then the third type of defilement are the underlying tendencies. We call it mental corruption. So, so far as the mental corruptions are concerned, they are very subtle. They are very shrewd. They are very cunning. It is not easy to identify. So far as transgressional defilements are concerned, it is easy to identify. And when you kill an animal, when you steal something, you definitely know that you have done it. And there is a greater chance that the outside world will also know. And it will be in newspapers, it will be, everyone around you will be aware of it. So it is something, transgressional defilements or engaging in transgressional defilements cannot be hidden. But so far as the obsessional defilements are concerned, you may be able to hide them, because obsessional defilement, having sense desire, having ill will, other people will not know. When you have sense desire, you only know, but you are living like a saint. And other people will not be able to see that you have a lot of ill will within you, because you act like such a lovely person, right? So when it comes to obsessional defilement, the difference is, you know that these are that these are defilements, but the others around you and in the world will not be able to know. And the underlying tendencies, even you will not know. Only your teacher will be able to see them. Your teacher will be able to see them when you are presenting your report. In the report, lines between the lines, it will show your underlying tendency, mental corruption, going towards lust, going towards hatred, going towards ignorance, right? So this is why the Blessed One is having the discussion as a supportive factor. So without that discussion, you will never have an opportunity to correct yourself, because you don't know mental corruption, you don't know underlying tendency. So Blessed One is giving an opportunity to practice and go beyond transgressional defilements and go beyond obsessional defilements, and then associate a teacher, so that you will be able to have an opportunity to correct your underlying tendencies as well, which may create your obsessional defilement once again, which may create your transgressional defilement once again. So unless these mental corruptions are tackled, you will not be able to liberate fully, right? So therefore, in this manner, I'm not going to dwell or go into the mental corruptions at this stage, because we are trying to understand 4 foundations of mindfulness. So this is one advantage of being mindful. And the second advantage is the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation. So how you overcome sorrow and lamentation is because of observation. Usually, when we are practicing, or let me put it this way, not when we are practicing, when we are not practicing, we are always ready to be sorrowful and start lamenting when something goes wrong, because we have all our benchmarks set. And if we don't reach these benchmarks, if we don't achieve the targets, then it becomes a worrying thing. So once it becomes a worrying thing, you will have lot of sorrow and lot of lamentation. And the world, it is very hard for you to achieve things that you want to achieve. It is very difficult. It may be financial, it may be social, it may be emotional. The world is not ready to keep you happy. The world is, the other person is always trying its level best, his or her level best, to keep him or her happy and not the other person happy. So as a result, there will have conflict in sharing happiness. So when you have a conflict in sharing happiness, especially through materiality, especially through sensuality, and you will have only disappointment. So therefore, my teacher used to say, have an appointment with the disappointment all the time. So then you will not have sorrow and lamentation. That is what we do in mindfulness. We simply become observant. So when we are sorrow, we know that sometime at any point in time that we will have this sorrowful situation, and we are happy to have it, and then we understand and accept ourselves. Yes, I am worried. There is nothing to apply to get rid of that worry. You accept it as a sorrow, and if you are lamenting, you accept that you are lamenting. That's all. And also the second or the third advantage is giving it, these four foundations of mindfulness is destroying the suffering and grief. It's an extension of sorrow and lamentation. When you are observing your sorrow, when you are observing your lamentation, you don't give food for suffering. When you have a disappointment, if you become sorrowful, and if you start lamenting, all what you are asking is asking for trouble yourself. So when you observe your own sorrow, when you observe your own lamentation, and you gradually removing the opportunity for suffering and grief. And then if I may give an example, I remember someone was very upset when someone close to him passed away. Then he came and told me, I'm getting so emotional. I simply can't stop it. Then I told him, let it come. And whenever it comes, you label inside that I am emotional. And keep saying, when it comes, emotional, emotional, emotional. So he kept saying that when this was coming. And after half an hour or so, he came back to me and said, yes, I kept on labeling emotional and it vanished. So what happens is, when we have sorrow and lamentation and suffering and grief, we become a sorrow to the sorrow. We become a trouble to the sorrow because we are trying to remove it. We are trying to eliminate it. So we are inflicting unnecessary negativity when you already are sorrow. So by accepting that, you don't give any fuel for it. You don't throw any fire material for the fire to become large, right? So when you simply observe face to face, honestly, 100%, and it will lose the food necessary to continue that sorrow and lamentation, and thereby even the suffering and grief will get destroyed. And these are, some people may think it is easier said than done. It depends on to what extent you are committed to it. If you are really committed to it, and we have a habit of, identifying ourselves with the suffering. It's the nature of some people. If they love having some sort of a suffering, they can keep on talking about it. They can keep on thinking about it. And then they create an identity out of it. So therefore, some people really love it. And they say, therefore, it is very difficult to do. It's the character. But if you are genuinely interested, and if you are dedicated, and if you are determined, it is not a difficult task to label. When you are sorrowful, you accept that you are emotional, that you have negative emotions. It's not a hard thing, and there is no need for you to go and ask from anybody. And initially it may be difficult for anybody, but over time, if you get used to it, then they will have some control over these things. And initially you will label and try to accept it. And over time, you will be able to just stop labeling, but simply see the mental agony on one hand, and on the other hand, physical agony. So you will see the relationship between both the physicality and mentality. And when you simply keep observing it, all these negativities that are generating them will lose its strength, and will lose the food that is necessary. And because of the scarcity of food, and that negative energies will gradually die down, and they will not completely go away, but they will die down. So once they die down, and since you are not giving food, these negative energies will not be able to be with you. And then these negative energies, it's like you have something bad in your tummy, and then it wants to go out for you to have a clean tummy. So when that happens, again you may think that the same worry is coming up. Again you may think that same lamentation is coming up. Again you may think the same suffering and grief is coming up. Then this is where the discussion is imperative. I may repeat, imperative, because you don't know what's happening unless there is a teacher. So although these are benefits, if you have 100% mindfulness practice, keeping the mindfulness to the fore, but a lot of people are not. A lot of people are still infants to the practice of mindfulness. So therefore, when you practice, you must have a teacher. You must have someone to help you, especially someone who is practicing mindfulness. If you are practicing mindfulness, even if you are not practicing mindfulness, if you practice other techniques, this will come up. And when they come up, if you don't have a mindfulness teacher, then good luck. And I have met people who have done yoga, who have done Kundalini, all sorts of things, and their negative energies have started the flushing out stage. Then people have been utterly confused, and they're really scared. And then for their luck, they get connected with the right teachers. And then we gradually train them to be mindful, and they walk on the path much better than people who are just meditating for the sake of meditation. And that's about the third advantage. The fourth advantage is reaching the right path. So when you are able to, destroy your own suffering and grief, and that is the path. That is what we are looking for. All of us are looking for just one thing, the happiness. The happiness is, you can't look for happiness, you can't reach happiness, you can't get happiness. Only thing you can do is, you can get rid of sorrow, you can get rid of suffering. So when you get rid of suffering, that stage, the stage where there is no sorrow, the stage where there is no suffering, is called happiness. But instead, we keep sorrow and suffering on one side and looking for happiness, whether we have lost somewhere outside. No, it's happiness means the absence of suffering. So this is why when you have suffering, don't suffer over suffering, observe suffering. When you observe suffering, suffering will lose its stronghold. And when the suffering loses its stronghold, what is left? the residue or the answer, the leftover, the balance is the happiness. So therefore, this is how you reach the right path. And then finally it says, for the attainment of Nibbana, which none of us have achieved yet, but we are striving hard because we are happy with what we are experiencing at the moment by looking at the first four stages or first four benefits. So we continue to practice mindfulness. And it also mentions how these things should be done. This should be done according to the Blessed One with three main qualities. There are four foundations, and you will have to be mindful of those four foundations, not just for the sake of being mindfulness, not just for the sake of being mindful. Sorry. There should have three qualities in your mindfulness. The three qualities the Blessed One expecting are, you will have to be ardent. Ardent in the sense, you should be striving hard. You should be very energetic and determined to get rid of the defilements. And with that determination, only you will have to practice. You don't practice mindfulness to improve your labor efficiency. You don't practice mindfulness just to get through your exam. You don't practice your mindfulness for physical ailments. You don't practice your mindfulness for mental ailments. You practice your mindfulness just to get rid of your defilements. So when you get rid of defilements, other things will fall into place. But today, unfortunately, especially in the Western world, they're using mindfulness for that purpose. So therefore, the Blessed One says, when this is being practiced, the first quality of the practice has to be ardent practice, energetic practice. We call it in Pali, atapi. And the second one, the second quality that you should have when you practice four foundations of mindfulness is clear comprehension. And we also call it full awareness. And in either full awareness and mindfulness or clear comprehension and mindfulness should also be there, which means it should basically having constant and continuing mindfulness. We call it in Pali sampajano satima. And the third quality that is expected when you practice four foundations of mindfulness is overcoming covetousness. Covetousness means excessive greed. So when you practice your mindfulness, it should be done in such a way to whatever stage that you will go to while practicing mindfulness, you should not get unnecessarily attached to it. It's something that has happened before Buddha. Whenever you practice, they have been practicing mindfulness. Whenever they practice mindfulness, and they will find a better physical and mental state. And when they find a physical and better mental state through the practice, they start building their house there. And they will start indulging in it. And they get caught up in it. So therefore, the Blessed One says, please practice with this in mind, simple observation and not excessive greed. Even if you get excessive greed, simply you will have to be aware of it. So that is the next quality that you should have when you place your attention on any of the four foundations. So it's overcoming excessive greed and also grief. When you practice, there will have not excessive greed, and there will have grief as well on the other hand. So whether it's greed or grief, you simply will have to be observant and don't get excessively involved in it. And it is easier said than done, but continuous practice will pave the way for you to master these qualities. To do it, Atapi, Sampajano Satima, the last one is called Vinayaloke Abhijja Domanasa. So with that brief introduction to today's topic, let me conclude my talk, and thank you very much for listening, and may you have the energy and the courage to continue these qualities for a better mindfulness practice. Everyone, Sarana. You all hear me? Are you all there?
Everyone, Sarana, Bante.
Everyone, Sarana. All right. So it's time to raise any questions that you may have.
I think we're okay in Brisbane, Bante.
Wonderful. Happy to hear. Anybody else?
Me, no, also.
Good. Veena is fine, I think, as well.
Yes, Bante.
All right. Thank you so much. And who is going to share the merits today? Can Brisbane do it?
Yeah, I can do it, Bante.
Thank you. So we will share the merits of the good deeds, good energies that we have generated today. I will invite all of you to join Steve for sharing merits. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you. Just getting the piece of paper.
Right.
Thank you, sir. May all Davids share this merit which we have thus accumulated for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness and prosperity. May all other beings share this merit which we have thus accumulated for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness and prosperity. May all the beings share this merit which we have thus accumulated for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness and prosperity. May all beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, having shared this merit, long protect the dispensation. May all beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, having shared this merit, long protect the teaching. May all beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, having shared this merit, long protect me and others. If by deed, speech, or thought heedlessly I have done any wrong, forgive, O Master, O Victor, greatly wise. If by deed, speech, or thought heedlessly I have done any wrong, forgive, O Dharma, to be seen here and now, timeless. If by deed, speech, or thought heedlessly I have done any wrong, forgive, O Sangha, practice well the incomparable. Let this merit accrue to our departed relatives, and may they be happy. Let this merit accrue to our departed relatives, and may they be happy. Let this merit accrue to our departed relatives, and may they be happy. By the grace of this merit that I have acquired, may I never follow the foolish, but only the wise up to the time I attain Nibbana. By the grace of this merit that I have acquired, may I never follow the foolish, but only the wise up to the time I attain Nibbana. By the grace of this merit that I have acquired, may I never follow the foolish, but only the wise up to the time I attain Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much for joining. See you all next time.
Thank you, Bante. Tero and Saranai.
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 Everyone, Saranai, Teruan, Saranai. I will end here.